All right, Kyle Neddenrip here with the Indy Star, talking to Austin Hough from the South Bend Tribune. We're talking Class 3A sectional boys basketball starting next week, Tuesday night around the state. All kinds of fun. Kind of weird this year. We only have, I think, 17 4A games I counted through the week. So really with this restructuring, Austin, Class 3A got even tougher. You drop out 20 teams roughly from 4A to 3A. But in your neck of the woods, there was a really good team anyway, South Bend St. Joe, which made it to the state finals last year and has basically its main players back, including Chase Canese and Nick Shrewsbury, and Ethan Roseman joins the team from Chittard. But Austin, wanted to talk to you, and I won't keep you long here, but wanted to talk to you about this team and kind of their chances and maybe what you see from them as they get ready to go on what they hope is another run to Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on. And yes, I am sitting in my car if anyone is asking. I had to drop off my mother for foot surgery. So she's doing well, though, so that's good. But to get back to your question, I think in almost any other year, St. Joe would probably be a favorite to win 3A. Like, they're that talented, but you mentioned this restructuring. Like, you've got so many good teams now in 3A with New Pal and Garin Catholic. I know has always been there, but Crispus Attucks and Cathedral. And so wasn't kind in that regard as St. Joe this year, but they're a great team. They're 19-3 on the season. Chase Canese is going to get to 2,000 career points by the end of this regular season, which will pass his brother JR for second all-time in county history. He's got about 275 more points to go to catch Marcus Burton. So I don't know if he's going to do that, but it would be a pretty historic run if he did. But and I think we'd have to give him Mr. Basketball by default, right? If he got to 20,
exactly,
yeah, right. So, but the best compliment I can give about St. Joe is like they have this uncanny ability to just be up 15 without even realizing it. Like they go on these runs where they put the pressure on you, they get a couple steals, quick buckets, layups, threes. You mentioned Canese and Nick Shrewsbury. Roseman has been a great facilitator for them with all of these great athletes and shooters around them. Elijah King was kind of like the defensive star for them last year. He's really elevated his offensive game this year as well. You can tell he's kind of put on a couple more pounds of muscle. Same thing with Shrewsbury, Roseman, and then Rashawn Woods rounds out that starting five. It's one of the best starting fives, in my opinion, in the state. I know there's a lot of great teams out there, but that five can go against any five really in the state, other than maybe a couple teams, and hang with them. So when they are on their game, like we saw against South in Washington in mid-January, they won that game by 43, scored 96 points, and probably could have gotten more than 100 if they just made a couple layups in the first quarter. They didn't shoot well in the first quarter, still finished with 96 points. When they're locked in, they are one of the best teams in the state. I think they're the best team in the greater Michiana area, regardless of class, and they'll be a dangerous threat for sure in this tournament.
South Bend St. Joe's 19-3. Should have mentioned that off the top. They have one regular season game remaining against Mishawaka, but they're also one of the highest scoring teams. 77.1 points a game, like you mentioned. They're a team that can get on you quickly and really put up the points. Austin, as you look at this sectional 19 bracket, is at Plymouth this year. They play South Bend, Washington. You mentioned that was not a close game last time they played each other. Can this be? It looks like an interesting game on paper when you talk about Steven Reynolds, and that Washington team is better record-wise than they were last year. What do you think about that opener? They play Wednesday night at I believe, the second game that night.
Yeah, the lovely 8 p.m. Eastern Wednesday night game. We all love that one. But I'm like, right. So the first game was a 43-point win for St. Joe. It got out of hand a little bit at the end. I think Washington kind of, pulled back a little bit, so to say. It got to like 20-25 at halftime, and I don't think Washington, not that they weren't trying per se, but they definitely held back a little bit. It's happened in the past before with Washington where they lose in the regular season to these teams, and then in the sectional they come back and beat them. It happened a couple years ago when they won the sectional in 2023. So I'm not totally discounting Washington because Steven Reynolds can have a big game. He could go for 35, 40 points. And if their point guard, DeGory Parker, is playing well too, they could be in it. But they just don't have the depth that St. Joseph has. So I think they will get past Washington in the first round. I don't think it'll be 43 points again. Like, I think it will be. I think it has to be closer by default. And then you got a potential second round game with your biggest rival, Marion, which was an all-time instant classic 2 weeks ago. Konechny at the buzzer, basically, to win it at Marion when they retired all the NBA guys' jerseys at Marion. It was a great night. One of the best regular season high school games you'll ever go to. Peak Hoosier hysteria, right? So that would be a fascinating game. Last year in the regular season, Marion beat St. Joe, and then St. Joe came back to beat them in the sectional semifinal. So, St. Joe wins the regular season game this year. Could Marion maybe pull an upset there? We'll see. And then you kind of got the dark horse on the opposite side of that draw, Culver Academy. They got a great draw out of it. New Prairie and John Glenn of the first round game are both struggling this year. Culver Academy gets a bye, then they get to play one of those teams, so they'll be relatively rested. Culver pushed St. Joe to overtime a couple weeks ago at Culver Academy. St. Joe narrowly won that game. Culver almost won it. They got fouled shooting a three as time expired. Kid made the first 2 free throws, missed the third for St. Joe to win by 1. So, how much does St. Joe learn from that? That'll be an interesting kind of subplot there if that becomes a championship game between St. Joe and St. Joe and Culver Academy.
Yeah, just by coincidence, talked to Kenny Roseman, Ethan's dad, the next day after he was up to that Culver game, and talked about how that was they're going to be a tough, and obviously, like you mentioned, they have a much easier draw on their side of the bracket. They should get through there. But Austin, appreciate you joining me here. Also wanted to ask you, you're up there in the area, really good 3A basketball, and NorthWood's another team that people know about. I think from what they did really 2 years ago to come down here and win the state championship, and they did a very dramatic win over Guerin Catholic.
Took a couple years off my life. Yeah, it was exciting though. It was a great game. Yeah,
great game, one of the best I can remember. But that I know this is a different team, but again, NorthWood, Aaron Wolf, it seems like they always are good, and again. They came down here and played in the Sneakers for Santa event at Brownsburg in December and beat a really good Zionsville team. And I had a chance to talk to Aaron a little bit. I know there's definitely some new pieces on this team, but they do have a name that might be familiar to people also. But what do you think of NorthWood? How are they playing at this point in the season?
Yeah, so they're doing well, 18-4, right? They're playing well, but I think the biggest thing for them, and we don't know the severity of this yet, but there's an injury to their leading scorer, Maddox Everingham. He has kind of been the driver of their offense the last couple weeks, month even plus, going back to the Northridge win that they picked up in mid-January. He was seen wearing a walking boot Friday night against Fort Wayne Blackhawk Christian. So we don't know the extent of that injury. They lost that game to Blackhawk at home. So his health will be a major factor for them, at least as far as being able to make a serious run. Their sectional is not as tough, maybe as sectional 19 with St. Joe and Marion and all them in there. But, Columbia City's a decent first round game for them, and Tippecanoe Valley's been playing well. NorthWood will have the home court advantage, so that always helps usually helps, I guess, come tournament time. But, they play a hard defensive-minded game, just like they did when they won state a couple years ago. Tyler Rosh, the name you mentioned, as someone who's kind of people familiar with, holding down the middle of the defense. Obviously 6'7", 6'8", whatever they list him at in the program, blocking shots, playing good defense, rebounding. He was a starter on that championship team a couple years ago. So, we'll see how they handle the injury, though. If Everingham is healthy, they are the favorite in that sectional. Even if he's not healthy, they could still win it. I feel confident they would, but if they have any chance to potentially beat a St. Joe in a regional game, they're going to need Maddox Everingham to be healthy, I think.
And that sectional, like you said, it played at NorthWood. NorthWood will play Columbia City on that Tuesday night, the second game. Tippecanoe Valley, Joe Luce is their coach there now, and people definitely know Joe from what he's done at various places, including Marion, Richmond, and he's coached at a lot of different schools, Jeffersonville most recently. So that team is very good. Joe, well known as a very good coach around the state of Indiana. So. Yeah. that will be a good test as well. And I believe Tippecanoe Valley, they would be on the other side of that bracket, I believe.
Yes, they are. Memory. I wish I had it pulled up right in front of me, but I don't. So, apologies if I got that wrong. But I'm fairly confident they are on the opposite side of Northwood and Columbia City. So, yeah, it's an interesting sectional. Got a little more interesting with the Everingham injury. But again, if he's healthy, I'm confident in them. But there's been no definitive kind of clear answer on like if he is going to play or not in the postseason. They'll probably rest him regardless the rest of this week. I think they have one more game on Friday night. But get him healthy for next Tuesday, and before the sectional begins.
Well, lastly, Austin, what's your gut feel? Do you think St. Joe's got it in them to get back down here again?
They definitely do. They're a very hard team to prepare for, so especially on a short notice. So, like in theory, right, if they're going to be the favorite in their sectional and they'll be the favorite in the regional game, that they'll play the Northwood sectional winner. So if it's St. Joe Northwood, that'd be a great game. St. Joe did beat Northwood earlier this year, but and then you get to semi-state. Obviously, that depends on who you draw in the first game, and who you get in the second game. The good thing about St. Joe is like they can beat you 75 to 70 or whatever, but like the Marion game was 57-54. It was kind of a muck it up. Marion plays a 2-3 zone. It wasn't super high flying offense everywhere. So they have abilities to win in different ways, which helps them a lot. So I mean, selfishly, it'd be kind of cool to go back down to Gainbridge Fieldhouse again and see them try to go for this. So I will say, yes, they do have the ability to go. But I think a lot of it will depend, on this. If they get through through regional, the semi-state draw will be kind of vital to who they play first. If they play the morning game as opposed to the early afternoon game, right? Like saving your legs with that style that they like to play and the press defense that they like to implement. So they played the morning game last year at Logansport. And I think that helped them a little bit. It saved, got them 2 extra hours of rest. And then we played a 3 overtime game at the nightcap. So,
Yeah.
so I know there wasn't much going on in the overtimes, like a lot of holding the ball, but still, you got to stand during that as well. So, they definitely have the ability. There's no doubt. And Knesny is a good enough guy that can take over a game. Shrewsbury's been able to take over games with his 3-point ability. Roseman, like I said, he scores well, but he's been distributing very well. I think he averages like 8 assists a game.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty easy with that offense to do that, but also you got to be able to do it. So they're a deep team. They're fun. They're very exciting, and yeah, I think they have a pretty decent chance to be getting back down to Gainbridge Fieldhouse again. So.
And they have the advantage of being on the north side of that 3A. The 3A South is going to be a bloodbath. So
yes.
It's
a little easier on the north this year, which 3A I feel like has been easier on the northern half, historically speaking, the last however many years, just in general. Keep all those indie teams to the south. That'd be great. So wherever they draw that line, keep it there. And we'll be fine with that. So.
That's not the case in 4A, but we won't get in. We won't get into that.
Fishers might be coming back up here to Northside Gym again for semi-state. We'll see. So
it would be an upset if they're not, but stranger things have happened, and that sectional is very good, as we know. So,
but it's the beautiful thing about the tournament, right? So
that's right. Well, thanks so much, and appreciate you coming on. And best of luck to your mom. Hopefully, she's. I
hope she's okay too, man. That'd be tough. So, thanks, Kyle. Always appreciate the time, man. Looking forward to hopefully talking more during the rest of the postseason.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks.
Well, next up on our Class 3A preview, talking to LaMar Brown out of Princeton. And LaMar, you guys have been building here. I think it was, 3 years ago you won 3 games?
Yeah, 3-21, 20-game losing streak. Started 3-0.
That's those make for long seasons, but I know you've been building towards this, and obviously had a great year last year. Playing in this sectional, you play at Southridge. It's always seems like every game is close. Every year in this sectional, it seems like you guys got through Heritage Hills last year, played Southridge for the championship, and lost by 10. But talk a little bit about your team. A lot of guys back from your team that you had last year, and I know high hopes for this year. Edwin Holmes and Jace Jenkins and those guys, I'm sure, trying to get it done. But just what did you expect out of your team coming into the season, and tell us a little bit about who you've got this year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're not too surprised. I know you follow high school basketball, and you don't put too much stock into June, but we try to challenge ourselves this past off season. So we traveled up and down the state to multiple Division I's, NAIAs, D3s, just trying to get our kids in front of the right people at the levels that we thought they could play at. And although, again, like I said, you don't put too much stock in it, we were able to go 23-1 this summer with our one loss coming to Fishers by 30 on Mackey Arena floor in front of Coach Painter and staff. And so they really put it to us, but I don't feel too bad because I don't think we're alone.
Yeah, you're not. You're not, for sure.
So no, kind of coming in, as you mentioned, we had high expectations. We had graduated the McIntyre twins, but we were bringing back everybody else, 2 all-conference kids and Jace Jenkins and Edward Holmes, and then honorable mention all-conference kid and Jalen Price. And then our glue guy that no one speaks about or really wouldn't know about is Chase Diehouse, but he doesn't show up on the stat sheets. Kid's probably going to take 2 charges every night. He's going to be the first one on the floor. He does all the talking defensively for us. Not that our other guys don't talk, but you get what I mean. He can make sure we're aligned and make sure we're in our right coverages and things. And so he plays a big role in what we do. And then DeMarcus Newsom came on, grew a couple inches over the summer, 6'3" guard junior now, averaging about 10 points per game. He's had about 4 games where he's led us in scoring. I think his career high is 21 or maybe it's 19. But he's capable of taking advantage of some mismatches, and he brings a different dynamic than the McIntyre twins brought for us last year. They were more or less off-ball slashers, but he has the ability to handle the ball and really get in the gaps and get paint touches and get our other guys involved and get them some cleaner looks. And so I believe he gives us a different dynamic this season. And then Gabe Curry, more of a defensive presence for us off the bench. And then 6'3" junior Zen Coomer, who we played both ways starting the season, and kind of just wanted him to go find some leadership roles at the JV level. But what he's provided for us after Christmas break has been amazing. He comes in, he stretches the floor. Other coaches yell shooter when he enters the game. And he's kind of our call him like an Instapot. Like he understands and his teammates know when he gets in this game, he needs to get the basketball. And if you get the basketball, you need to shoot the basketball. And so take advantage of that opportunity while you're on the floor and see if we can go on a little run while we have you out there. But as you mentioned, it all starts with Edwin Holmes and Jace Jenkins. Edwin's 6'7". I call him our Swiss Army knife. He actually just got voted our Courier I think Home Team Friday Player of the Week this past week. They're coming out to practice today. He had a triple-double with 22, 13, and 13 last week.
Wow.
On the season, he's averaging 17 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. And so he leads us in every statistical category. Then you have Jace Jenkins, who's shooting about 36% from 3 on the season. He's averaging about 14.5, 15 points, top 3 rebounding, averaging about 4 on the team, also 2.5 assists. And then Jalen Price, I don't know if anybody's got a chance to see this young man. He's only about 6'1", but probably has 17 dunks on the season, and he can kind of pretty much dunk it any way you would like. And we've had some pretty good highlight reels with him. And also he's an outstanding defender. I believe he's the best defender in Southwest Indiana on the ball, especially. And he hasn't allowed another team's best player to kind of reach their average all season. And so we're really just a collection of talent that is a selfless group. We don't care who scores the basketball. And as you mentioned, we've been kind of building throughout the last 3 years to where we kind of got a little hunger, but they really enjoy the journey that they've taken together from 3 wins to 10 wins to 18 wins, and now finding ourselves with 21 wins headed into the postseason.
This is a team, or a program, I should say. And I remember the 2009 team when they came up here and played in the state championship and held off, I believe it was Rochester, in just a crazy game, and ended up winning the state championship that year. And I think it was a couple overtimes, but I know how that Princeton community really gets behind its basketball program. And I know you came over from Evansville Bosse, where you had coached under Shane Burkhart, but what appealed to you about Princeton? What's your experience been there? And I'm sure people are excited, obviously, but now that you've been there a little while, what's your take on coaching at Princeton?
I think you kind of hit it on the head. I mean, I don't want to say content because Coach Burkhart's done an amazing job of making sure he hires coaches that have aspirations to be head coaches. And we've seen that with Mark Rohr, now at Gibson Southern, Jason Roach at Evansville North, and Kyle Brasher, who just won a Gibson Southern girls state title last year. And so, like, it's a tree, and that, like I said, he hires guys that wants to be head coaches, and so he gives us ownership in the program. But while I was there at Evansville Ball, see, there's a nice little rivalry with Princeton. And even in some of the down years where we were pretty good and able to maybe take advantage of them a little bit, they'd have 2-3 wins in a season and the crowds was still showing up. And so when the job came open, we thought at the very least, let's go get interview experience. But I was like, if we're happen to get lucky, why not go to a place that kind of breeds basketball and has a basketball tradition? And as you mentioned, will rallies around the team, good or bad, but especially when you're successful. And what it's been these past 2 seasons, now that we've kind of got this thing turned around and just won our 3rd conference title in 5 years, the crowd has really shown up. The boys feel it when they walk around the community. I kind of joke that I got to pick which gas station I go to on lunch, because if I'm not careful, I can end up in a 30-minute conversation about the next game or the last game, and I got to get back to class. And so,
Right.
no, it's just been really exciting. But that was the appeal right there. I mean, I think these small one-school communities still hold that special niche of high school Indiana basketball magic, I guess, so to speak. I don't really have any great words for it, but I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, and the girls' side too, obviously with Jackie Young and everything she accomplished, was able to see some of that when she broke the record, and it was really cool to see how they supported her as well. And she was such a cool and is such a great leader and a kid people I'm sure still look up to there in Princeton as well, the girls and the boys side. So when you look at this, LaMar, you look at this sectional, I guess, and I know when you're a coach in your situation, you're probably just looking at what's directly ahead of you, certainly. And you guys did get the bye. You'll play Gibson Southern or Jasper on Friday night. But the overall vibe of this sectional, what's kind of your sense of it? There's so many teams in there, 6 teams total, but all teams except for one with a winning record, and Jasper's only one, and they're certainly dangerous too. But overall strength of this schedule of this sectional, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, I know I'm biased because, I mean, obviously I'm located down here, but I believe it's one of the better sectionals in the state, especially in Class 3A. As you just mentioned, everyone's kind of having a banner year, so to speak, and I believe Jasper might be one of the best 9-win teams I've ever seen, and they're getting healthy at the right time. They're currently on a 4-game winning streak, and I did an interview a couple days ago, and someone told me that there's actually 2,000 coaching victories inside of our sectional. Now, I'm only responsible for 75 of those, so I'm trying to do my part. However, I think it just shows the coaching and the quality coaching that is in our sectional. We had a great conference, I believe, down here this year, and everybody was involved in that besides Vincennes, Lincoln, and Jasper, who play in the SIC, which is also a strong conference. And then it's just some natural rivalries. I mean, Princeton Jasper goes back way before my time. Princeton, Vincennes, Lincoln, then obviously the Gibson County rivalry with Gibson Southern, who we've already played twice this season. And so I know both communities are kind of itching for that. I don't know how the head coaches feel about it. But, I just think it's going to be – I think anybody can win any night, and I think that's kind of how you have to approach it. I think it kind of gives the vibes of last year's field as well, where everyone kind of thought that winner was decided on Wednesday night between us and Heritage Hills, and Southridge ends up knocking us off in the final. And I think that's what you're going to see tonight. All the coaches know each other very well. We've coached against each other's personnel. We all have our veteran groups, and so I think it's going to really come down to who's making balls and playing the best stretch of basketball next week.
And this is a really good year in 3A. I mean, there are teams that, coming down from 4A, Addicks and Cathedral up here, New Pal, and then moving up, the Brownstown Centrals of the world. So,
yes.
All these teams coming into your class that was already a good class. But I wanted to ask you, too, you had a chance to play a couple of our teams up here that are in 4A. Lawrence Central, you played them down there. Actually, that was in the, I believe, the Bossy Winter Classic. But you did come up here and play North Central as well. Very good team. Won the Marion County tournament. They've been going through a little bit of injury situation stuff. But why play those games? I mean, what's kind of the purpose of that for you guys?
I mean, kudos to Shane Burkhart. Something I learned from him. I think you need to challenge your teams for, people that you can potentially see in the tournament. And to be ready to win tournament games. But then also, I think when you have talented kids, it's important to get those guys in front of people like yourself and other people that can kind of help vote and, see them or kind of write an article about or give them a shout out here or there. And you guys have the ability to reach the masses and some of the people that we can't. And I remember with Shane Burkhart back in 2018, doing that with Micaiah Larry. Like, we went up to North Central and we played Jermaine Cousinard in a big time matchup, had an opportunity with Chris Wilkes and those guys at North Central. Then we also went up to Logansport and played Jalen Attaway at the Berry Bowl. And it just felt like it was extremely important to get a kid like Micaiah Larry at 5'7", 5'8", but very, very talented up in that area around the right people for Mr. Basketball votes or Indiana All-Stars. And then obviously for our team, just challenging ourselves to make sure we were prepared to make the run and we wouldn't sort of be shell-shocked at certain stages throughout the state tournament. And I think I find myself in that same situation here. I think Jace Jenkins is a kid that could kind of get lost in the corners of the state. Not saying that he's a surefire Indiana All-Star or anything like that, but you know what I'm saying? Just getting that name out there, top 100, we kind of got to work our butts off, but kind of need to be in front of the right people, top 60, things of that nature. So I think if I'm doing my job correctly for a young man like him, it's important to get him up there and to get him in these games and in front of the right people. And then obviously having a 6'7" junior who is just a Swiss Army knife, I think it's really important for a kid like Edwin Holmes, who I believe has a shot to make some of those games and some of those teams, for him to go play up there. And so the relationship that I had with Coach Washington and LC, we were able to play at Bossy. He was the Christmas Addicts coach when we made our first semi-state run. And so we built that relationship there many years ago in like 2015, 2016, I believe. And then Coach Ginn as an assistant at USI and being around our kids at Bossy, we were able to develop a relationship. And, we're going to look to hopefully get up there next year when Edwin's a senior and got a few guys coming back, or at least try to schedule a home and home with some people up there. And I just think it's great for our young men and trying to build a program the right way. And so whether it's right or wrong, I guess the community may challenge that we could be 23-0 if we scheduled the right opponents. But I think those games are way more important for what we're trying to get accomplished than maybe going to schedule some wins.
And you still weren't far off. Those were both close games. Coach, I know you got to get to practice here, but what kind of these you're done with your regular season and, kind of getting ready. It's kind of a long layoff when you get the bye, but how is everybody's health and what do you kind of do over these next few days to get ready for that sectional game?
We are healthy right now. We watched a lot of film yesterday and just got up shots. We try to keep it pretty brief. We think we got out of here about 4:30. Today we're going to get after it for about 90 minutes again, but we actually have our sectional banquet tonight. And so that'll cut practice short. So I think those 2 days right there kind of helps do that. We'll probably have an inter-squad scrimmage some point this weekend just to try to make sure we don't have any rust and, try to get up and down the floor without coaches blowing whistles and stopping it. So we'll have our assistant coaches referee that, officiate that, so to speak. And then, we'll start trying to dive into game plans. And, in our position, it's unique, as you may know, that you don't know who that opponent's going to be for Friday night. So you're kind of trying to blend scouts right now, trying to focus on yourself as well, and then also prepare for the other side. So what I will say is our staff has done an amazing job of gathering scouts, and I think that's one thing we're really, really good at. And so I think we have that pretty much under control. And now it's just trying to figure out what we want to attack on a day-to-day basis and making sure we try to make sure that we comprehend more than we communicate. And so that's on our board in our locker room, comprehension over communication. And so just making sure that we're not communicating what we're looking to get accomplished this next week, but we comprehend where we need to be and what we need to do and what we're looking for, depending on the matchups we may face.
Well, again, Coach LaMar Brown, appreciate you coming on. The Princeton Tigers are 21-2 and playing in Sectional 31 down there in Southridge. They start play on Friday, actually, in that semifinal game. But best of luck to you, Coach Brown. Appreciate you taking time to join me here.
Appreciate you having me on. Thanks, Kyle.
You bet. Well, hello there again, everybody. Kyle Neddenrip, and I'd like to thank Austin Hough from the South Bend Tribune, LaMar Brown from Princeton, the Princeton coach, for joining me to preview some of the Class 3 sectionals coming up next week. Out of the area, the north, of course, with South Bend, St. Joe, and NorthWood, and then, of course, Princeton coach LaMar Brown talking about his team down in the south part of the state in Class 3A. And as we talked about with both those guys, the overall look of Class 3A, very, very tough this year. You know, we've written a lot about it, talked a lot about it. There are a lot of star players in this class, a lot of really good teams that probably could contend even in 4A. If maybe if Fishers wasn't around, or if in a normal year, because I think a team like New Pal with what they have, and they were back-to-back sectional title teams in class 4A the last 2 years, and basically had their whole team back, coming back this year. And certainly Julius Gizzi and Moses Haynes and Ben Slagley and that team will be geared up for a run. And just to talk about some of the Central Indiana teams in Class 3A or sectional groups in Class 3A, you start at Newcastle, where, for the sake of Central Indiana, there's not a lot of teams in that group. Hamilton Heights is part of that. Delta's kind of been the team that has run the sectional here recently, and I think probably the team to beat again. They did lose some talent from last year's team, but Mark Detweiler, their coach there, obviously has a lot of history of taking teams deep in the tournament. And last year they played a 3 overtime game against South Bend St. Joe that nearly got them into the state finals. So they'll be back and strong, certainly. Jordan Fernie, senior for them, Bronson Edwards, and Lucas Bragg is a junior for a team. They're 4-0 against the sectional field. Have a pretty good draw. They'll play the Jay County Yorktown winner. They have a bye into the semifinal, and probably the teams to beat on the other side are Hamilton Heights and potentially Jay County. Newcastle, actually, on the side over there with Hamilton Heights. So you could see Newcastle and Hamilton Heights playing. Newcastle has a team that, playing on its home court, probably a better team than its record shows. They could be a team to watch there. At Frankfort, a lot of good teams in this one. Guerin Catholic, I would say the team to beat, ranked number 5. But I would definitely, they have a good group with Bryson Cardinal leading that team, and maybe have even overachieved to some extent this year with a team that was largely unknown coming into the year. With Jake Grissom has come on as a sophomore, Ryan Paris as a senior, and then Bryson Cardinal, and those 3 guys have really kind of done a lot for that team from a standpoint of scoring and offensive production this year. And Guerin Catholic, they will play Lebanon in the first round. Lebanon having a really good year, 16-6, and that's a team I think that could be a sleeper pick in that sectional. And then the other probably the other teams to watch there would be Brebeuf, which plays Crawfordsville in the first game. They should get through that one, and then you could see the Brebeuf-Guerin potential rematch there. Guerin, I covered that game the first time they played each other. Guerin won, I think, by 13 points. But Brebeuf definitely a team that can come at you, and they are a relatively inexperienced team by this point in the year. They'll be ready to go for sure. They have, like I said, Crawfordsville the first game, Guerin Catholic and Lebanon in the other game on that side of the bracket, and then the other side would be Tri-West and Danville potentially playing each other in the Hendricks County rivalry game on the other side of the bracket. Tri-West won the first meeting between the teams. They're playing really well right now. I put them as the sleeper in that sectional 25 at Frankfort. Ryan Miller, their sophomore guard, and then Kellen Dakin, Jackson Paris is a sophomore. Wes Ward, 6'8". He doesn't score 20 points a game or anything, but definitely a difference maker inside. He averages about 9 a game and 5 rebounds, 3 blocks. And Tri-West definitely has a chance to do something here. They are relatively inexperienced as well, so that's something maybe to watch in this sectional with maybe some of the more inexperienced teams. Against a team like Guerin, which also somewhat inexperienced, but does have that senior leadership of a guy like Bryson Cardinal. So I did pick Guerin to beat Tri-West in the championship there in that sectional. Sectional 26 at Shortridge, I would say, no offense to anyone else, that's sort of a 2-team race there with Cathedral and Crispus Attucks. We kind of knew that. It's a 6-team field, but Attucks and Cathedral would play in the semifinal round there. And Cathedral won the first matchup between the teams by 8 points in the city championship game. Attucks has not lost since that game, though. And they've beaten some good teams along the way. Beat Ben Davis the other night. Again, Mark Zachary started, didn't really play in that game, however. But still, a really good win for Attucks, which is now 17-6. Cathedral, the last couple of games, been without Brady Kaler with an ankle injury. So I would assume he would be back and playing in that game. But Kaler averaging about 17 a game, 7 rebounds. Julian Smith and Keaton Aldridge and Derek Kennedy, they really can come at you with a lot of guys. Aiden Hughes and LeBron Goff as well. So they're really loaded on the offensive side. And Cathedral's been playing really well, beating some good teams too, as Attucks has. So that should be a dynamite semifinal sectional game. The other side, Shortridge and Purdue Poly in that first round should be a really competitive game. I can't see either team probably putting up much of a challenge against Cathedral or Attucks. We saw Purdue Poly play in the city tournament against Cathedral, and it was not close. But that should be a good game on the other side of that bracket between those two teams. Sectional 27 at Cascade is largely out of an area team. Well, it has kind of a mix. You have Indianapolis, Washington, you have Cascade, and then some other teams that are outside of our area. The top team, Northview, as I record this, they're 22-1, and have beaten a lot of really close, good teams in close games this year. They're a guy that people may know, Braden Goff, is a junior, and most of this team will be back next year, so they'll definitely be a team to watch, certainly in this tournament, but also going into next season as well. And then you have 3, I think, teams that could play the upset role here with Edgewood, Cascade, and Washington. Washington has Roosevelt Franklin, who's a junior, averaging about 23.7 a game, who can really score. And then they're not as deep as last year, maybe, or not as overall balanced, talking about the Continentals. But that team last year did win the sectional for the first time since 1995. So you have a little bit of carryover, I would think, and some confidence from that season coming into play again in the tournament. But different sectional there. Last year they were in a different group there, but a chance for them to go to Cascade. And I like this Cascade team too. I saw them once earlier this year. They have a better draw. They're on the opposite side of Northview, Washington, and Edgewood, and a good group that has some juniors mixed in with Toby Savini and Brady Trebley, and senior Connor Sanders and sophomore Ryder Williams. And junior Mason Warren as well. So a lot of guys who can score. I'm tempted to pick Cascade in that, but Northview did beat them by 14 earlier this season. And have won, like I said, a lot of close games. So I think Northview is probably the smart pick there. And then sectional 29 at Shelbyville is the other local sectional. Also really good group here. New Pal, I don't think you can they just keep beating really good teams. They're 21-3 as they close the regular season now. And like I said, they just have a lot of experience, very much a senior-dominated team with Gizzy, Haynes, Slagley, and Austin McMahon. And then junior Evan Derrick can come off and make some shots, too, from the outside, too. So they've got some guys beyond Gizzy who can score for them, for sure. Yeah, one thing to watch here, though, New Pal has a great draw as well in the 17 sectional. They're coming from the opposite side of Shelbyville, Roncalli, Indian Creek, and Greenwood. So they play Rushville in the first game on Tuesday, and then the winner would play Beech Grove in the second game. Very young, Beech Grove's got some good talent, but a lot of it's younger. So I think they'll be on the come up here. But New Pal definitely the pick on that side of the bracket. And then, I think if they would play, either Roncalli or Shelbyville, one of those teams going to knock each other out on the first night or the second night, actually, and on Wednesday night, and then play Indian Creek or Greenwood. Both those teams are sleeper type teams as well. But I would say if you end up playing Roncalli and Shelbyville, I think that Shelbyville Roncalli game should be an excellent game. But Roncalli did play New Pal to a 2-point game in late January. So I think they would have some confidence if that game does happen. I saw Roncalli earlier this season. Connor Kessler, a really good player. Joe Taylor, a big inside, who averages almost a double-double. I think about over 7 rebounds a game and about 11 points. And then Noah Schmaltz and Will Hegwood, very good players. Also, one a senior, one a sophomore. And then Shelbyville with Caden Claxton, who's only a junior, Mar Nicholson, a junior. Gavin Reed is a junior. Damon Badgley is their one senior who really scores a lot, plays a lot for them. But that'll be a team that'll be good again next season. But yeah, I think New Pal is certainly the favorite there. But I would say one of those teams on the other side, probably most notably Roncalli, if they can win at Shelbyville in that first game, could be a team to watch. That could be a fun championship game. So my picks for the and you can find these. I post them at IndyStar.com with our Class 3A preview, but did make some picks there. I picked and these are really good. This will sit up, and I'll get into what the regional might look like here in a minute. But Sectional 17 at East Chicago Central, I picked the home team there, East Chicago Central over Gary Westside. Kankakee Valley, Sectional 18, Hanover Central over River Forest. Sectional 19 at Plymouth, I had South Bend St. Joe over Clover Academy. Sectional 20 at Northwood over Tippecanoe Valley. Sectional 21 at Garrett, I had Fort Wayne Blackout Christian over Leo. Sectional 22 at Belmont and Marion over New Haven. 23 at Logansport, I had Mechaniqua over Peru. Sectional 24 at Newcastle, Delta over Hamilton Heights. I did mention these, but at Frankfort, Guerin over Tri-West. At Shortridge, Cathedral over Shortridge. And Cascade, I had Northview over Cascade. And then New Pal over Roncalli, Sectional 28 at Shelbyville. So that's all those Central Indiana sectionals that I mentioned earlier. And then at South Dearborn, Sectional 29. Jennings County is definitely a team to watch with Carter Kent. Their record is not really indicative of how good they are. Can score a lot. And I had them winning that one over South Dearborn, the host team there in 29. Sectional 30 at Charlestown should be a great one. I got Brownstown Central beating Silver Creek in the championship game. Those two teams both dynamite. And Brownstown, I think, a team that's maybe been slept on a little bit because they lost Jack Benner to graduation. But Colby Hall, Chase Coomer, those guys really good again. And I think Brownstown, they were undefeated for a large part of this season. Could create some issues for teams down the road in the Class 3A bracket if they can get through that sectional that's very difficult at Charlestown. Princeton, I had winning. I talked to their coach earlier, obviously, LaMar, and had them winning this one. It is a very tough sectional, as he mentioned. Have them beating Southridge, which would be a turnaround from last year's matchup, which Southridge won, knocking out Princeton in that game. So I've got Princeton advancing. And then sectional 32 at Boonville should be another really good one. I've got Evansville Memorial beating Evansville Central. That game just happened recently, and those two teams very good again. So that would lead, if that happens, and certainly won't happen like that exactly, I wouldn't think. But that would lead to the regional matchups, and the IHSA post these while they do the sectional draw, what the matchups will be. And I know people ask, or do they just go down in order? They don't. They actually draw kind of like they always did. But it used to be where you'd have the regional where it'd be two. You kind of match them up and see, they'll play the early games, and then those teams would win and play the night games. Well, now these winners obviously only play one game at the regional. So then your matchup will be next week in the first round of the semi-state. So it is a little bit of a, the way it is now, these matchups can maybe lead you to play another week rather than be done earlier. I don't know if I like that format yet or not. I think I like the old way better, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. There are definitely some good things about it, but we can talk about that another time. So if those matchups would come true, The regional matchups in 3A would be South Bend St. Joe against Northwood, East Chicago Central against Hanover Central, Mechaniqua versus Marion, Delta versus Blackhawk Christian, and those would be the North regional matchups. In the South, you would have Cathedral versus Northview, Guerin Catholic New Pal, which would be a rematch of a game played not long ago that New Pal won, Jennings County versus Princeton, and then Brownstown Central and Evansville Memorial. Again, that would be the South, those last 4 games I mentioned, leading into the semi-state round. So, again, I appreciate you joining me here. And for our guests we had on talking Class 3A basketball, I've got more in the written version at indystar.com. But thanks again for coming on here and joining me.